Tonight, we're in the Netherlands, marking 80 years since Canadian soldiers helped liberate this country from the Nazis. Grace and gratitude for the incredible sacrifices Canadians made.
So we just wanted to welcome you on board today.
We are side by side with the remaining veterans as they make the journey back.
What does it mean to you to be able to come back here?
I get choked up as soon as I put my feet on soil.
Their emotional return 80 years on.
Here in Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney sets a date and expectations for his first White House meeting with Donald Trump.
Do not expect white smoke out of that meeting.
A high-stakes trip to Washington, a visit from the King, and a promise to call a by-election for Pierre Poilievre quickly. CBC News takes you inside Iran amid high-stakes talks with the U.S.
I think the negotiation is good for two countries, especially for Iran.
Rare access at a critical time.
From CBC News, this is The National with Erica Johnson and Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault in Grosbeek, the Netherlands.
Thanks for joining us. We're here at the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands as commemorations get underway to mark 80 years since Canadian soldiers fought to push the Nazis out of this country and won. 80 years might seem like a long time ago, but the Dutch have never forgotten who set them free. And so many are turning out to honor the Canadian veterans who are able to travel back. At their age, that's not many, and it just adds meaning to this moment as war once again rages in Europe and Canadians are suddenly feeling their own sovereignty come under threat. We have much more on this ahead, and we'll bring you into the ceremony that happened right here earlier today. But first, we'll send it over to Erica.
Thanks, Adrian. Addressing the threat to Canada's sovereignty is a top priority for Prime Minister Mark Carney. Today, he laid out an ambitious agenda for his Liberal minority government. Speaking for the first time since the federal election, Carney says a face-to-face meeting on Tuesday with U.S. President Donald Trump is among his first tasks. They'll talk trade pressures and the future of the relationship between the two countries. Carney's news conference was wide-ranging and direct. Ashley Burke begins our coverage with a look at the Prime Minister's planned moves even before Parliament resumes.
Mark Carney campaigned on a promise to take on Donald Trump and win. Now the stage is set.
We agreed to meet next Tuesday in Washington.
The Prime Minister holding his first press conference since winning the election and speaking to Trump earlier this week.
I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, let's make a deal.
Carney is up against an unpredictable president who's ignited a global trade war and repeatedly threatened to make Canada the 51st state.
He respects, as others who are good negotiators, and he's one of the best negotiators, they respect strength. Your Majesty.
CBC News has learned to show strength, Carney asked King Charles before the election about the possibility of delivering Canada's throne speech. Now that's confirmed.
And in this way, before the people of Canada.
The last time that happened was in 1977.
It is actually quite a coup to have such a monumental visit so early in his term.
Jason Easton was a trade advisor for Justin Trudeau. He says Trump respects the royal family.
Having the King deliver the throne speech and opening this session of Parliament is the clearest and loudest demonstration yet that Canada's sovereignty is not up for negotiation.
Carney says up for negotiations are tariffs and a new relationship with the U.S.
I'm not pretending those discussions will be easy or they won't proceed in a straight line. There will be zigs and zags, ups and downs. But as I said in my remarks, I will fight for the best deal.
Trump's ambushed leaders before during talks like Ukraine's president.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
Carney says he'll be prepared and warns getting a deal could take time.
Do not expect white smoke out of that meeting. There'll be white smoke probably later somewhere else in the world this month, but do not expect that.
Carney says he expects difficult but constructive conversations in Washington, and while his goal is to get tariffs lifted, it's not likely to happen after this first meeting.
And Ashley, what else do we know about Tuesday's meeting?
Erica, Carney called it a set of meetings and says the amount of time and the senior White House officials involved suggests these are serious talks. Easton said realistically, success coming out of this will be the two leaders agreeing to meet again and start a process to get both countries out of this trade war.
Ashley Burke in Ottawa, thanks. Carney also gave a sense of how he plans to govern, including dealing with the other parties in his minority government. Cameron McIntosh has that side of the story.
Good weekend. Giving off the vibe of a guy comfortable setting high expectations, even a little respect tap for Terry Fox. Prime Minister Mark Carney making it clear he wants his government to be different.
I'm in politics to do big things, not to be something.
When the House begins sitting later this month, Carney says the focus will be on housing, immigration, interprovincial trade, and a middle-class tax cut, along with a new tone in Parliament.
I am committed to working with others, governing as a team in Cabinet and caucus, and working constructively across parties in Parliament.
He also says he'll prioritize a couple key Conservative promises.
Canadians also sent a clear message that their cost of living must come down and their communities need to be safe.
And as for another governing deal with the NDP?
Short answer, no.
After years of divisive politics in Ottawa, the opposition is skeptical.
It'll really be up to Mark Carney, and he can determine how Parliament functions based on how honest he is, how respectful of Parliament he is.
Let's bring it home. Thank you very much, Canada. Merci beaucoup.
Carney is extending a little grace to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who lost his Ottawa area seat and status as opposition leader.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Conservative MP-elect Damien Carrick is now stepping aside so Poilievre can run in a safe seat in Alberta. Carney has up to 6 months to call a by-election.
I will ensure that it happens as soon as possible.
Okay.
No games, nothing, straight.
The new Liberal Prime Minister trying to distance himself from the last.
The last thing he wants to do is be portrayed as Justin Trudeau 2.0.
Carney will have time to get started on it all. After the election, none of the opposition parties are in a rush to bring his minority government down. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Liberal Party has increased its seat count by 1 tonight after Elections Canada's results validation process. Liberal Christina Tesser-Dirksen flipped Ontario's Milton East Halton Hills South riding after narrowly defeating Conservative incumbent Parm Gill by 29 votes, moving the Liberals back to 169 seats, still 3 short of a majority. The Conservatives dropped to 143. Mark Carney is also vowing to fight for the auto sector as it grapples with a new round of cuts. General Motors is laying off more than 700 workers at its Oshawa plant, citing tariffs and trade turmoil. As Nisha Patel shows us, some in the industry worry it could get worse.
Hundreds of Canadian auto workers will soon be out of jobs, and General Motors is blaming American tariffs.
Elbows up didn't do anything, did it?
It is what it is. That's all I can say.
The company is cutting production, pointing to slowing demand and the trade environment. Its Oshawa assembly plant will lose more than 700 jobs. Another 1,500 positions at parts suppliers could also be affected.
Today we're on edge. Today we're looking for answers. Today we feel uneasy.
Local union president Jeff Gray worries there may be more losses in the months ahead.
These are our jobs, and to see them disappear because we're trying to appease Donald Trump in the United States is absolutely devastating to us here in Canada.
Donald Trump has repeatedly urged automakers to shift manufacturing to the U.S. to avoid tariffs. Oshawa builds Chevrolet Silverado trucks. About 90% are shipped south of the border. GM builds the same truck in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and recently said it would boost production and hire workers there.
We need our governments to stand up and stand firm and stand strong to protect Canadian workers, protect Canadian jobs, and protect this industry.
Tariffs are creating huge uncertainty across the auto sector. GM estimates it could take a $5 billion hit this year. In Windsor, Stellantis has already paused production twice over tariffs.
The plan is to avoid any further shift shutdowns or production losses. But the reality is there are things that are outside of our control right now.
GM says it will reduce Oshawa truck exports to the U.S. and will reorient this plant to build more vehicles here for Canadian customers starting this fall. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Oshawa, Ontario.
Let's turn now to Iran with a special CBC News report from inside the country. It is rare for Canadian news crews to get permission to enter the Islamic Republic, and it comes at a critical moment.
Doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious.
The Trump administration and Tehran are now involved in high-stakes diplomacy over Iran's nuclear program amid an intensive U.S. military buildup in the region.
With Iran, if it requires military, we're going to have military.
At the same time, Canada's relations with Iran are in a dire state with no formal diplomatic ties. And that makes Margaret Evans' report tonight all the more extraordinary.
Hanging in the air, Iran's teetering talks with the United States over its nuclear program, even at Friday prayers. The lead cleric full of praise for Iran's negotiators and warnings about their opponents' devilish ways. It is a receptive crowd. Since they're violators and tyrants and respect no laws, negotiation with the Americans is useless, says 82-year-old Abdullah.
The Friday sermon is the Iranian leadership's method of choice when they want to deliver some of their more strident messaging to the domestic audience, but to the outside world too. Behind closed doors, it's more complicated.
Ali Shamhani is an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. We are not pessimistic towards negotiations, he says. Neither are we optimistic. Shamhani tells me Iran does take U.S. President Donald Trump's earlier threats to bomb the country seriously, but he also downplays them as a negotiating tactic. The old enmity is preserved not just on the famous Down with the USA mural, recently given a fresh lick of paint here in Tehran, but in the former U.S. Embassy, now a museum named the Den of Espionage. But many Iranians have moved on, eager to step out of isolation and beyond past stereotypes. Abol is 33.
I think the negotiation is good for two countries, especially for Iran, because we are in the close situation right now.
Layla is one of an increasing number of young women here choosing not to wear a headscarf despite strict laws. If we make peace with the United States, we're hopeful that the situation will change, she says, and that young people like me don't have to emigrate. The aim of a deal would be to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Analysts say 3 rounds of indirect talks have been positive, but not yet substantive.
It shows that they both have enough political will to do so. But this was only the first phase.
Whether there is enough political will to go beyond it is another question. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Tehran.
And as you've seen, CBC News is also in the Netherlands tonight, marking the 80th anniversary of that country's liberation. Let's go back to Adrian.
Thanks, Erica. These are just some of the more than 2,300 graves of Canadian soldiers here in the Groesbeek Canadian War Cemetery, most of them killed while pushing the Nazis out of the Netherlands. Their presence here is proof of the price of freedom. And as Chris Brown shows us, what we saw here today is proof of the enduring love and respect the Dutch have for their liberators.
That 22 Canadian Second World War veterans could even make this trip to the Netherlands is remarkable. At 98, Felix Labelle is one of the youngest.
It's with humility that I think of those who died. And when someone shakes my hand, I tell them, you're shaking the hand in the name of the ones who died for our country.
In a ceremony with a strong Indigenous presence, Canadian and Dutch officials lauded those who fought and those who didn't make it home. 7,600 Canadian soldiers were killed during the vicious battles that would eventually liberate the Netherlands in May 1945, including Barbara Wood's father, Robert Kindersley, an engineer. He was killed days after fighting in Europe ended when a German bomb he was trying to defuse detonated.
He had that one job to do. His suitcase was packed. Unfortunately, it was a booby. Came to him, killed him immediately. He had sent me a letter to say, I'm going to be home for your birthday. My birthday was in June. He didn't make it to my 9th birthday.
During the war, Honorary Lieutenant General Richard Romer was a reconnaissance pilot. Now 101, he fears some lessons of the war are being forgotten, as alliances that have protected Europe since then are fraying.
To see it starting to come apart a little bit is not very encouraging, because the big nations like Russia and others will take advantage if they possibly can. So I'm hopeful that Canada will do its part fully.
For the Dutch, the valor of the Canadians who liberated them is taught in schools. This was a chance to say thanks to some personally, likely for the last time.
And Adrian, you know, the stamina of these vets was really something else. It was pretty warm out there. They weren't in the shade for the whole time. Then they took time to do their walks afterwards. People treated them like celebrities. Pretty extraordinary.
And so they should. You were also talking with some of the Dutch people from this area who weren't part of a delegation but just wanted to be here.
I met a man named Rigo Wolters, really interesting guy, took his bike here. He says he has to come just so he appreciates the price of freedom, and it does have a price. He says his house has lots of books. He's read all about the Canadian contribution, and for him, those maple leaves etched on the gravestones, he says that's a very powerful symbol of freedom.
They are indeed. Chris Brown, thank you.
Thank you.
This is just the beginning of commemorations here. There are several more days of events planned to honor this anniversary and the Canadian vets. Tomorrow, there'll be an Apeldoorn, where a parade will celebrate the bravery of Canadian and Allied soldiers who liberated the Netherlands from Nazi German occupation. Sunday is Remembrance Day in the Netherlands. That's when the delegation will head to Holten, where more than 1,300 Canadian soldiers are buried, and they'll be there for a ceremony focusing on reflection and remembrance. There will be a gesture of gratitude from above, a poppy drop from a helicopter, a powerful symbol of sacrifice. And Monday officially marks 80 years since the liberation of the Netherlands on the 5th of May, 1945. The Canadian delegation will be in Wageningen. More events there will mark Germany's surrender, the hard-earned freedom that followed, and the courage that made peace possible. The journey here was a long one for the Canadian veterans and a meaningful one for just about everyone who met them along the way.
From the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. We are honored to have a delegation of 21 Canadian Second World War veterans on board.
We were on board their flight here to the Netherlands and saw firsthand the respect and reverence they received. A little later, more of the memories they shared with us of the fighting, the starvation they saw, and what it means to be back right here. But for now, Erica, we will send it back to you in Vancouver.
Thanks, Adrian. The woman whose allegations are at the center of the sexual assault trial of 5 former Canadian junior hockey players took the stand to testify today.
I think she's shown amazing courage.
What she says happened inside the hotel room. Next. Plus, British Columbia marks a day of mourning for the victims of the Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy.
As a Filipino, it hits home, it hits hard. But I think, we can't let this define us.
We're back in 2. Actor Russell Brand has been granted bail after being charged with rape and sexual assault. He made a brief court appearance today. The charges involve 4 separate women. The 49-year-old has denied the allegations. The woman at the center of a high-profile trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players testified today about the night in 2018 when she says she was sexually assaulted. Katie Nicholson was in court.
Before she even testified, a cluster of supporters outside the London courthouse.
Break the silence and the violence.
They chanted as the accused walked by. Among the crowd, longtime feminist and advocate Judy Rebick, who wanted to show support for the complainant, known only as EM.
I think she's shown amazing courage.
Former World Junior Hockey players Michael McLeod, Cal Foote, Dylan Dubé, Alex Formanton, and Carter Hart are all charged with sexually assaulting the then 20-year-old woman in June of 2018. They have all pleaded not guilty. EM testified she was hesitant to go out that night but agreed to meet co-workers at Jack's Bar. She recalls being introduced to a man named Mikey, who was McLeod. She said she drank an excessive amount, including 8 shots, and that her inhibitions were lowered and her vision was blurry. She described being sandwiched by the men on the dance floor and feeling claustrophobic. There was just a lot of uncomfortable touching, she said. She said she didn't remember getting from the bar to McLeod's hotel room. The two had sex, but the focus of this trial is on what happened next. Court heard he texted teammates, "Who wants to be in a three-way? Quick, 209, Mikey." The Crown says EM did not consent to the alleged sexual acts which followed. Court also heard evidence from teammate Boris Kachuk, who was briefly in room 209. He said McLeod offered him oral sex, he presumed from EM, but he did not take the offer seriously and left. Advocates of sexual assault survivors are paying close attention to how EM is treated in court.
If she is subject to the typical tropes and allegations against her character that we so often see in these types of trials.
EM is expected to continue her testimony on Monday when she'll have to address the specific allegations of sexual assault against each of the 5 players. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, London, Ontario.
After losing a court battle to keep his publicly funded security detail, in a lengthy interview with the BBC, Prince Harry said he can never return to the UK and remains estranged from the royal family.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff.
The prince says his homeland is unsafe without royal-level security because of the media-fueled hostility towards himself and his wife after leaving his duties and writing a tell-all memoir. Nearly a week after the horrific attack in Vancouver, a man who lost his wife speaks out.
When you're around somebody who brings out the best in you, it's harder to do that when that person's not around.
The injuries he sustained and how she's being remembered on BC's province-wide Day of Mourning. Next. Taken from home at the age of 6, the remains of a man who attended a residential school have been returned to his family.
This day has finally come when we could begin the process of actually bringing Percy home.
A family's long fight for Percy. And Adrian has more from the Netherlands.
Erica, as you'll see, just getting here to Groesbeek War Cemetery was a big journey for Canadian veterans. Keep in mind, the youngest making this trip is in his late 90s.
Just wanted to welcome you on board today.
All right. Woohoo! We were humbled to be able to make the trip with them and hear why it is so important to come back to this place 80 years later. The National breaks down the stories shaping your world. Next.
Across BC, people are gathering to remember the 11 people who were killed last weekend when a driver rammed into crowds at a Filipino street festival. An official day of mourning that Brady Strachan shows us was about not just grief, but also unity.
At this memorial near the scene of the attack, people lay flowers and write personal notes, expressions of grief and remembrance over the many lives lost here nearly 1 week ago.
As a Filipino, it hits home, it hits hard, but I think we can't let this define us.
The BC government has declared Friday as the official day of mourning for the 11 people killed, run down by an SUV while they celebrated at the Lapu-Lapu Day Street Festival. As people attended vigils and masses across the province, Noel Johansson is recovering from his injury.
It's in and out. It's a roller coaster.
But the pain doesn't compare to the heartache of losing his wife. Jennifer Darbalay was a costume designer, an artist, and the mother of 2 children.
We all miss her so much because when you're around somebody who brings out the best in you, it's harder to do that when that person's not around.
He says his wife had deep connections to her community.
She had that disarming quality about her. And she just carried love with her. You could feel it. And she taught me how to love.
As the province mourned, 30-year-old Kaiji Adam Lowe appeared in court virtually. He's charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. Lowe had a number of interactions with police and mental health workers before the attack. The judge has agreed Lowe should be assessed to see if he's fit to stand trial. But all day and into the night, the focus in Vancouver is grieving.
We have to come together in solidarity to express, our love to each other and support each other.
Support that will be needed in the weeks and months ahead. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hello again from the Netherlands as Canadian veterans gather here for a special commemoration. At the Grosbeek Canadian War Cemetery, a pause, a thank you to the Canadians who liberated the Netherlands at the end of the Second World War. And a message from one to his fallen comrades.
My message is a simple one: you are not forgotten.
That liberation was 80 years ago, but the respect and love for that Canadian effort feels as strong as ever.
But they would do that for us, people they had never even met.
To have the Canadians who liberated the Netherlands back here is more than special, and in that collective narrative, there are so many individual stories, some graciously shared with us in the days leading up to this.
Jim Parks, how good to see you.
You too.
I'm Simon Buma, the mayor of Leeuwarden.
It's been 80 years, but they still look at Jim Parks and see their hero.
And we're so grateful for what you did 80 years ago.
See a Canadian who helped expel the Nazis from the Netherlands.
Give you the flag of the municipality of Leeuwarden.
Oh, that's nice. From Leeuwarden, yeah.
That's one of the Dutch towns liberated by the Canadians at the end of the Second World War.
You're still with us, and we're so happy to be with you.
The mayor traveling all the way to Canada to thank those who fought to save strangers a world away.
There we go.
Jim is 100, but he's restless and determined.
Smile.
And is still a soldier on a mission, is among those vets heading back to where he fought his last battle in a long war. And for him, it was a very long war. Because Jim Parks also fought in Normandy, was among the first Canadians to land at Juno Beach on D-Day in 1944. He's found the strength to show up at every important D-Day anniversary and always makes the effort to return to the Netherlands.
Good evening, everybody. From the flight deck, this is your captain speaking.
He is not alone.
We are honored to have a delegation of 21 Canadian Second World War veterans on board.
In a huge operation of logistics and respect, nearly 24 other Canadian vets from the Second World War made their way to Holland this week. The last liberators, the youngest among them in his late 90s, the oldest 105.
So we just wanted to welcome you on board today.
All right. Woohoo!
A flight utterly captivated by these vets. How could you not be?
What does it mean to you to be able to come back here?
Whenever I come over here, and I've been over a couple of times now, I get choked up as soon as I put my feet on soil.
Thank you to our veterans. We are eternally grateful for your service to our country.
All of them heading to a nation that has never forgotten what it was like to see the Canadians come to the rescue.
They were sort of kept in their houses or wherever they're hiding. And then they made sure that the people that were outside were the friends, like the friendly forces. They started to come out. But when they first come out, they're sort of a little bit weary.
More than just weary after years of Nazi occupation, they were starving. The official daily ration for each person was just 320 calories in the last days of the war. It became known as the Hunger Winter.
New hope comes to Holland with nourishing food.
The Canadians became known for not just freeing, but feeding the Dutch.
150 lorries driven by Canadian drivers take the precious commodities to hungry Hollanders.
The Canadians were among the first to arrive, and among the first wave of them, the paratroopers, jumping out of planes to land behind enemy lines. Ernie Wiles, at 99, remembers it with horrifying clarity.
We're a little bit bewildered, found all our equipment, our guns, and we had bags strapped to our legs with ammunition in it, and our guns were in there. So as quick as we got to the ground, the Germans were right there. We had to stop them. That's what our job was.
Once his paratroop dropped down in September of '44, the mission was clear and terrifying.
Blow all the bridges up that we could blow up and stop them because they all had their tanks and stuff. Because they parachuted in, we were the first ones in there.
A spirit of wild fiesta reigns in towns and villages freed by the Canadian drive.
There they were to welcome us. The Germans were on the run.
Because the Germans were on the run, that means they were hiding everywhere, making for the closest of calls.
I was told to go down and check this farmhouse. He said, throw a grenade in first and then go in. So I just went there and I said, no way I'm going to throw any grenade. I opened the doors, a whole family of Dutch. There they were, 5 of them. You can't forget that, you know. Yeah.
They killed so many of the Dutch people. It was unbelievable. They would just hand their hands and knees to us. You're Canadian.
Ernie was hurt in these battles. He got shrapnel in his ankle from a bomb going off as he landed a jump. It was such a vicious wound, his ankle had to be rebuilt when he eventually got home. But getting home at all was extraordinary. 7,600 Canadians didn't.
Well, this is me, that's Herbie, and that's Walter.
At 104, Edward Stafford has a few tales to tell. He joined up early in the war with his buddies, the names as fresh as the scenes in his head.
It was really Herbie that got us into the Horse Guards because he joined first. So Walter came to me one day and he said, we're not going to let Herbie go by himself, are we? So we decided to hitchhike up to Borden to join the Horse Guards.
They fought together through the Italian campaign, then a delay for Ed. He had appendicitis. His friends continued on to Holland.
And they had told me that Herbie had been killed. And then I had to go home and face his brother, you know. We didn't know what to say to each other, really. Because I'd grown up with Herbie, you know. It's how he was killed, you know. The whole thing was just so stupid.
The Herbie he's talking about was Herbie Stitt, crew commander of a tank hit by a bazooka. He survived, but the tank was damaged. They couldn't fire back at the Germans.
He got outside under fire. He was out there for about 8 hours. He did everything right. He went back, and the first thing he did was go to the maintenance.
An exhausted Herbie took out his sleeping gear to rest. That's when a gas truck rolled up.
The guy ran over him.
Herbie hit and killed by that gas truck.
He was one of the bravest guys I ever saw.
When Ed went back for the 70th anniversary, he made sure to visit Herbie.
I hope it wasn't for nothing, because I don't think any of us knew what we were getting into.
None of them could have known what they were getting into. But what they left behind was a nation with a gratitude that does not seem to lessen. And the Dutch show it in extraordinary ways. Gingerly preserving Allied memorabilia, for example, including one of the cars Ed drove officials and commanders in. To see that car on his last trip a decade ago seemed to mean the world to him.
We were in some function, and all of a sudden I saw the scout car, and I took off, went across this field. It was really something, you know.
When you landed there were hundreds and hundreds of them there running up to you and grabbing you and Canada, Canada, you know. It was every place you went, Dutch people all were waiting for you. It was really you just felt like kings.
It's always so nice because they're so appreciative. To them it's so real. Even though these people that you see, some of them may not even be born at the time. But the history comes along with the family.
It's a huge effort for these men to make to go all that way to the Netherlands, but there's no doubt the love fuels them.
The love. The love they had. For us going over and doing what we did. And we were able to go back. Lots never got back. But for us to go back and see it all again and see how they appreciated it.
Do you hear the heart in that?
So special to have you here.
So I'm so proud to come back.
Can you feel the heart in this? The warriors have arrived again, and the welcome again is full and warm and necessary.
Hello, welcome in Apeldoorn.
The Dutch have been waiting.
We're proud to have you here.
Their liberators have returned.
I want to bring in Tim Cook now, Chief Historian at the Canadian War Museum. So Tim, we've heard the veterans speak. You've seen how they've been received. 80 years ago is a long time ago. But what do you make of the scale of remembrance still?
It's really astonishing, isn't it? The Dutch still remember. They remember their liberators who were once young men, now aged warriors. And as we've talked about, the last of their generation, only a few thousand left. We were lucky to have a few here today. That meant something to, I know those veterans, it meant something to the Dutch people, the Canadians who are here, and I think for you and I as well, to see them, to hear their stories, to perhaps bear witness to that service and that sacrifice.
Absolutely. New wars are underway all the time, right? We heard some of that referenced in the commemorations today, and it seems to make all of this seem more relevant again.
It does. I think, I've been lucky to study commemoration and talk about it. It's about the past, but it's always reflecting in the present. And I think we heard that in the speeches about the wars and the fights for freedom today. I think that resonated with people here, those listening, and I think those veterans who understood the sacrifice. Many we saw came back here to say goodbye to their old comrades who had paid that ultimate price. And we as Canadians, I think, have a better sense today. We live in a dangerous world. Let's hope there will not be a time when the Canadian Armed Forces have to go into war and conflict. But there are lessons here, grim lessons at times when we look around the world, when Canada has to stand up, when its men and women may be put in harm's way. And I think we see that with the liberators today.
Okay, Tim Cook, thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for being here this afternoon during the ceremony.
Thank you.
After the ceremony here, visitors were given Canadian flags to place at each grave, making sure no soldier was forgotten. There is, of course, another symbol of the link between this country and Canada, a symbol planted every spring in Ottawa. Each May, Ottawa pops with color. The Canadian Tulip Festival is a huge draw, but this bright moment originates in a much darker place. During the final months of the war, the flowers the Netherlands was known for became life-saving. When food ran out and starvation set in, people started to eat the tulip bulbs to survive. It was in that time of desperation that the Canadians broke through. By then, members of the Dutch royal family were already sheltering in Ottawa. And in 1943, the maternity ward of the Ottawa Civic Hospital
was declared extraterritorial for the birth of Princess Margriet, so that she would have only Dutch citizenship. When the war finally ended, the Dutch sent 100,000 tulip bulbs to Ottawa as a thank you, and every year more have arrived. The tradition as enduring as the friendship the two countries share.
Family's decades-long battle to reclaim a relative's remains. Taken from home as a boy, he lived and died hundreds of kilometers away from his community. Now they're closer to taking him back home.
Imagine how many more Percys there are. You can only imagine.
Sarah Law takes us through the family's long journey to return his remains and what this moment means in the broad conversation about truth and reconciliation.
This is where Percy O'Nabagan was buried, more than 1,200 kilometers from home. Now, 59 years after his death to the day, his family has traveled to Woodstock, Ontario to repatriate his remains and give him the ceremony he always deserved. After being taken to residential school, Percy was put into several hospitals and institutions without his family's consent. When he was 27, he died of tuberculosis. Claire O'Nabagan has spent 20 years trying to find out what happened to her uncle so he could be reburied in Long Lake 58.
It was just hard to believe that we were actually here and that this day has finally come when we could begin the process of actually bringing Percy home.
Because Percy died when he was an adult, not a child, the O'Nabagans did not qualify for federal funding to repatriate Percy's remains. After CBC News shared Percy's story in the fall, the Ontario government offered to cover the costs. A spokesperson for the ministry responsible told CBC News in an email that this is not just about bringing Percy home. It is about repatriating an ancestor, honoring the lives of all those affected by the residential school system. Several chiefs and community leaders have supported the family during this process.
Imagine how many more Percys there are. You can only imagine.
Percy's remains will be examined by Ontario's Forensic Pathology Service in Toronto before they're brought to Long Lake 58.
This has gone way beyond just our family and how we feel about it.
The O'Nabagans hope other families can get the same kind of support to bring their loved ones home. They plan to rebury Percy in Long Lake 58 this summer. Sarah Law, CBC News, Woodstock, Ontario.
And that's all tonight from here in Vancouver, but Adrian is back after the break with a final look at today's ceremony marking the liberation of the Netherlands.
Welcome back to Grosbeek in the Netherlands, where a weekend of commemoration is now fully underway to remember and honor the Canadian soldiers who helped liberate this country from the Nazis. That began with a ceremony right here today. Let's take another look at some of those moments.
They shall not grow old. As we that are left grow old, age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
And tomorrow never came.
to spend time with these vets, to watch people go to them unprompted, to talk with them and thank them, is just one of those experiences you want to bottle up and keep. I know I won't ever forget, our crew won't ever forget the privilege of flying with the vets here. And there are days of moments of gratitude ahead. So if as a Canadian, you've never made this pilgrimage, grab the chance should you ever get the opportunity. You will be glad you did. For Erica and all of us here at the National, here in the Netherlands and at home, thank you for being with us. We'll be back from right here on Sunday. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.